Hey guys, welcome. Chris Friesen here. I'm going to go over how I set up my forest scene using Element 3D. This technique has been really helpful in achieving a few looks for some recent projects. I hope you find the tutorial useful for your own work. I've included a link below that you can download a project file along with a couple tree models I created using Tree Sketch. Tree Sketch is a free iPad app, and I suggest you check it out. It's pretty cool. The project includes a night scene, a summer scene, and a winter scene. And please feel free to use these use these for your own things. Don't be afraid to change camera angles, adjust things a little bit, do what you want. Just let me know what you come up with. So we'll dive in. We will open a new composition. And 1280 by 720 is good, 15 seconds, we'll hit OK. And I'm going to create a new solid by hitting Command Y on a Mac. And we will call it Element. And I'll come over here and type in Element. And we'll apply that. We'll go into the scene setup. And hit My Models and scroll down. And you'll have to have the Video Copilot Halloween pack installed. But it's free on their blog. And I should be able to put a link down below. So we will grab the patch and I'll put that on layer 3 just so it's out of the way. We'll go new camera, we'll make it 35mm and hit OK. And if you press C, you can toggle through different camera control options, and I will rotate around here. I'm going to go back into the scene setup, and I'm going to toggle down into my models. I'm going to go to Tree Sketch, and I'm going to pick my pine tree, and I'll put it on group 1, and I'll hit OK. So I have that tree show up in the middle. I'm going to drop down group 3, go into particle look, and expand the particle size. And since the texture goes up with that, I will go into scene setup, and I'm going to click on patch and increase the UV repeat. That just gives you a little bit of smaller texture pattern. And I'll turn depth of field off on the camera, speed things up. So I'm going to drop down group 1, particle replicator. And I'm going to change replicator shape to plane, and I'll increase the particle count, and I will expand the scale shape. Something like that. And I'm going to go into scene setup. And for this specific thing, I'm going to shut off the leaves because we want kind of a fall scene. And that'll also help speed it up for now. And I'm going to come down into group 1 and go into the particle look and the rotation and the randomize angle. And we want to rotate the Y rotation just so this kind of helps you have one model look like more. So I'll put that at about 27. I'm going to drop in a couple image assets I have. I've got a large background image that I'll also have in the file. I created this using View, which is an Eon software product. I'm going to pull this into a new comp, and I will hit OK. And so normally you could use the matte to wipe it out, but I'm just going to turn off the matte for now and leave the background as it is. So if I drag that background, actually I'll just change the name, call it BG. And if I drag that in, I will come over here and I'll type in CC environment. And we will apply that and slide that underneath everything. This way, if I rotate the camera around, that background completely loops and stays back there, no matter which angle you have the camera. So I'm going to come up here and hit Layer, New Light, and I'm going to create a point light. 100% intensity is good, and I'll hit OK. So I will take that light and I will duplicate it, and I will push it around into a couple different spots here. Duplicate it again. And I'm going to go into Element, and I'm going to drop down the render settings and go into lighting and raise the light fall off. Maybe duplicate that one and put another one up here. It's a little dark. So that looks pretty good for now. So if I go back into scene setup, I'm going to drop down a different tree model I have here. And I'm going to put this on group 2 and hit OK. So it shows up right in the middle. So I'm going to go into group 1 and close some of these. And if I go down to the copy paste group, I'm going to hit copy and then go into group 2 and go down to the copy paste group and hit paste. So it puts these trees exactly where the other ones are. So with this, what you could do is actually go and turn off the first pine tree, and now you have a nice summary scene to use if you wanted to. But right now I'm going to turn back on the pine tree and hit OK. And in group 2, I will drop that down, and I actually want to lower all of those down to the ground to kind of give myself some lower vegetation. And I can increase the particle count just so it randomizes it a bit more than the trees. And so that's what we have so far. If I go back into scene setup, I'm going to just kind of lower the diffuse color a little bit on the leaves and the trunk. Maybe it's a little dark. Might just bring the leaves up a bit. Didn't help too much, but we'll go with that for now. I'm going to drop in some footage I have, green screen footage, just me walking up. There's a no-no here. My feet went out of the shot, but it should work for what we have. So I'm just going to hit the mask tool and cut myself out. And make sure I stay in the whole way. So I'm going to come up here and type in key light. And I will apply that. And I will pick the green color at the bottom. I'm going to go to screen matte and increase the screen gain a little bit, and drop down screen matte and lower the clip white and up the clip black, and I'll put it up to full res so you can see what's happening here. DV footage, and this is worse because it's an H.264 lowered quality, because I'm going to include this with the package, but I'm going to go and put my footage in another comp again. And I have a script that was included in the DV Rebels guide by Stu Maschwitz. Check it out if you can. It's a great read. If you don't have that though, I believe Red Giant has a DV artifact remover, or you can find one somewhere. But it helps out quite a bit. We'll have a look here. So I apply that, and what I'll do is I'll call this DV remover, and I'll go back into my normal guide footage, and I will alt click and drag that footage on, and you can see the difference in the edges there. If I undo, just gives a much cleaner edge. So I will put this to final result and hard color. And I will shrink the matte a little bit. And if you ever really want to see what's happening, if you go to status, you'll notice that we still have quite a bit of mess in the legs there. So I can adjust for that. And I'll put that back to final result. And that should be good for now. So back in my main comp, I want to find a position where I want my character. So somewhere right about here. And so I'm going to go into Element and down to Utilities. And I will select a 2D position using the crosshairs. And I will generate a null. So now, if I move the camera around, that null is locked to the ground. So I will drag my footage, my keyed footage in. And I will make it a 3D layer. And I will hit A for anchor point. And I will adjust that so I get my feet around where I want it. And I will rotate the layer hitting W. And I want to go into the element position, hit P for position, copy, and then apply paste to my character so he lands right where that was. And I will scale down the layer. And I will set hit AA and set lights to off. And maybe push in here a little bit with the camera. So the problem now though is my footage still a little big, but I am on top of everything. You know, there's objects in the foreground that should be in front of me, but my layer is actually on top of everything. So when you've got your element layer set up the way you want it, you can duplicate it and come into, on your new one, and we'll call it World Position Matte. And I will come up under Render Settings, or sorry, Output, and go Composite down to World Position. And it generates a black and white matte for you to use. And you can also drop down Create World Position and hit Create to create a null that will control where it is. So I'll copy the position from my element position and apply it to the world position, and I will rotate. And I will pick whip to the guy. This way, wherever I move him, it'll go with it. So what you want to do is you want to drag the keyed footage underneath the world position matte. And you want F4 to change options, and you want to change to Luma Matte inverted. And this way, any of the foreground stuff actually passes in front of the keyed footage. I might go into the world position settings and lower the feathering a bit so it's not so soft. And apply curves to the guy and just give him a little bit of contrast. And I'm also going to now use the matte layer to wipe out the sky. And I will put a solid behind that layer, and I'll come over here So we have a black sky now. But I'll come into the background and I will apply curves and darken the trees. Might adjust the light fall off a bit more. And we'll turn the fog on and make it white. And push the fog start distance back a little bit. And maybe we'll lower the opacity a little bit too. And now we'll take the background layer and apply curves. And we'll boost the shadows a bit. I'm going to come back into the background and darken that a bit more, and I'm going to apply the gradient ramp effect. I'll lift that up and make this a darker color. And I'll also maybe desaturate that a bit. I'm also going to increase the ramp scatter, and that helps eliminate some color banding. It might be a little too blue. I'll make that a little more gray, or totally gray. Hit OK and go back. I'm going to make an adjustment layer, and I'm going to apply curves and just kind of color grade the whole thing a little bit. And I'm going to duplicate that and reset and drop down the center, and I'm going to apply an ellipse mask, and I will invert it and hit F for feather and just give myself a little bit of a vignette. I'm also going to add a tint to the green screen footage and knock back some of the saturation. I'll change this and call this vignette, and I'll call this CC. And you can also sometimes apply a toner and get the color you want and just blend it with the original just to add a little hint of an overall tone. I find it sometimes works nicely. So I'll just set a key position or a keyframe for the position on the camera, and I will slide in. And I'm noticing I'm being chopped off at the knees, so there's a hard edge here right where my character was. So what I might do is actually just go and I will push this forward a bit more. It'll still be parented to my character, but I'll just do a round preview. Yeah, at least more of my legs are there now. Just gonna move this light around here. Just kind of give an edge to the trees in the back. And darken my character up a little bit. And I'm going to boost the overall color correction a bit just to get some of the highlights back. And I'll help desaturate the back a bit more. And we can come in and turn depth of field on. Maybe lower the aperture so we're not too narrow. And since the background isn't a 3D layer, we can add a camera lens blur, just so it kind of fakes like the depth of field is applied to it as well. Adjust the focus distance a little bit forward. Get that tree next to me more in focus. And lower the blur level. So what I might do is I might go into group 1 on the element. I kind of actually want the trees a little bigger. So I will adjust that to maybe 15. But whatever you do to that layer, you have to go into the world position and do the same thing so it recreates the matte for you. So since that's a little messy, I'm going to drop down group 1 and I'm going to scale the shape up a bit, and I'll just make that an even 72. And of course I got to go into the world position matte and duplicate that, so I will type in 72 for the scale shape, and that corrects the matte. So you just try to find a nice spot, and all else fails, you can actually just move the character over. Just want to adjust this light back here. I feel like the trees are a little bright, but I'm going to come into element and actually reduce some of the light fall off, and get some of the detail back in the ground. Go into the scene setup, and I will take my pine tree and I will go to the branches and I will drop the diffuse color there. Maybe a little too much. That way we get some detail back in the ground, and the trees have a nice darkness, but you still see some rim lighting on them. So we'll do a quick RAM preview. So another neat thing we can do is I'm going to go into the scene setup, and I'm going to turn off group 2, and I'll do the same for the world position. Hit OK. So I'll go back into original element layer, and into scene setup, and I'm going to duplicate the patch model, and I will drag it down. I'm going to turn off the original, and I'm going to come into the presets, pro shaders, and I'm going to go into the organic. I'm going to drop ice 02 on top, and I'm going to go to the pine tree, and I'm going to duplicate that as well, and I'll drop it above, turn off the first, and I'm going to apply the same ice to that. So if we hit OK, we have kind of a wintry scene now. But instead of doing that with the tree, I'll go back into scene setup and I'm going to turn back on my original tree. But I'm also going to turn the snowy tree, I'm going to put it onto group 4 because it hasn't been used yet. And I'll hit OK. And I'm going to go copy the attributes from group 1. And I will paste them to group 4. So now all those trees are exactly on top. But what I'm going to do is shift them the tiniest bit to one side. It's like 0.5. And up ever so slightly. Gives us the look that snow is stuck to the side of the trees and on top of the branches. If I go out here, I can actually see that there's a little bit of separation. So I can adjust that better. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea of how you can, change seasons. You notice the effect of the matte doesn't work as well right now. So you would most likely want to go in to the matte and do the same adjustments there. But I'm just going to try to get the snow layer as close as possible and cross my fingers. And this works okay for here. If you run into any flickering with the trees, just go in and turn up your aliasing. Level 2 works quite well and really boosts the quality, but it will slow things down a bit. So maybe turn it on for your final render. Thank you for watching.